G'day guys, just going to jump in quickly before the podcast begins. This was originally filmed a while ago as a practice run and to test the microphones and the cameras. So even though we have no idea what we're doing, we thought some might be interested to hear a part of our farming history. Anyway, I hope you enjoy.
Well guys, welcome to the podcast. We've got Dad. I don't call you Peter, do I? What would you rather?
Only on official business. No, for the purpose of this, you can.
And we've got Pete. He is my cousin and your nephew. And there is a bit of a story. So we thought for this, I don't know if it's the initial podcast. We did do a bit of a harvest one, but it wasn't really. Hopefully this is a little more professional. We'll see how we go.
You know what professional means, don't you? It's just a way of faking it to make you look like you know what you're doing.
Yeah, well, there's a bit of that, isn't there? So...
There'll have to be.
So, lost my train of thought already. So, yes, there is a history with Pete. I would have only been, 5, 6, 7, 8, something like that, when you came to work on the farm from Ballarat.
Yeah, I think so, Matt. It was 1995, so work it back from there.
And you're nearly a city boy, weren't you? Nearly?
Yeah, Ballarat was home, so a large town, I guess you'd call it. But perhaps in that time frame, at least, it's changed quite a lot in 30 odd years.
And you, finished school, and then did you get kicked out of home? What brought you all the way up here?
Well, yeah, to go back probably a bit further than that, we used to come up here to visit Grandma and Grandpa, so Mum and Uncle Pete here, brother and sister, and we'd often be here a couple of times a year and end up being a part of the farming. It was all exciting as kids to come and be a part of that, and even at a young age to get shown a bit of responsibility to operate a machine or just be part of the everyday goings on, even interactions between my dad and Uncle Pete in just fixing whatever had to be on the day was just a good basis, I guess, to then lead up to us coming up here on our own on the bus, which was always a pretty big adventure. And
how long a trip was that?
Yeah, well, they didn't take the most straightforward route, so yeah, it was 20 hours, and you'd always get stuck to a nice old lady who'd made too many sandwiches for the trip and give you a bit of helpful advice on the way, and so it was about 20 hours by the time we get here, and then that was usually a little bit more work oriented, those trips. It coincided with staying with Grandma and Grandpa and visiting them as well. So whether it was tractor driving, there was a lot more cultivation in the year rather than no-till back in those days, early 90s I guess it would have been. And so lots of opportunity to learn and to just be a part of it.
And then did it, because I've only roughly know the history, did you offer, or how did it come about for Pete to come up sort of more permanently?
Well, I'm going to offer a disclaimer here right now. I've got 3 brothers, and we all can see the same situation, and we all describe it differently. Right? So
it's kind of not surprising.
My memory is of it that I could see that Pete had an aptitude for the farm. He was a good, careful operator, even as a 13, 14-year-old. You know, you could put him on a machine and know that you'd come back and it'd be still going. His ego didn't overrun his ambition or his ability. And I just had the feeling that he was probably wasted in Ballarat for what I thought he might have been good at, and it took me a while. I did offer the opportunity, and then I got cold feet, and And then I mucked him and his family around a bit, unfortunately. And then in the end I just said, no, I've got to do this. So I just offered him a job, and I said, well, I think he needs an opportunity on the farm. That's how I felt about it. Now, whether that was right, I don't know. But, and, yeah.
So that's about how it happened, do you reckon?
Yeah, I think all in all, like maybe 94, it was a drought, and so by the end of 94, it was pretty. Things hadn't changed, so it looked pretty grim up here, and yeah, I remember meeting up with you maybe on the ferry down at Queenscliff,
Okay.
somewhere there. And talking about it, it would have been Christmas time.
That's right, yeah.
94, and saying it perhaps wouldn't work out at the moment. And so, yeah, that was, I had all, from then we'd planned for me to go back to school and have a go at year 11. And there's a few other possibilities of apprenticeships and things floating around, but then by late January, things had changed here, and so I came, and it started to rain quite a lot, and set up for a reasonable year. And then, yeah, we had Uncle Pete had some contacts with the guys at TAFE, and there was a course they were offering to coincide with working on a farm, so it was pretty much 3 days at TAFE and 3 days here.
So that was like a farm hand type TAFE course sort of a thing, was it, or like a?
Yeah, it covered mechanics, like almost the first year apprenticeship of a few different things. There was welding and boiler making. So with that course, you could sort of launch. It pretty much covered that. If you went into any of those trades, you could take off from there.
Be nice if they still did that sort of thing today, to be honest.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that don't know, hit year 11, 12 or even after that, and don't know what they want to do. And if they could at least do a course that covered a few things, they might get some direction.
Yeah, particularly at that age to start working and have still have an educational or academic side to it. A lot of that course was practical, and there's a couple of really good guys there that, if you were keen to learn, they'd give you everything they could. And it was agronomy. It was pretty broad, but it was good. Yeah.
And because there was sort of in a position, my understanding, that there wasn't an abundance of work as such, and that would have helped Pete being at TAFE for a few days a bit. But how did it sort of change with that extra pair of hands to help? Because all of us kids, Brad would have been in school. I was 4, so there wasn't a lot of. It was just you basically. You were the show. It was It was only this block here,
Yep.
1,200 acres.
Again, as I recall, I felt that Pete needed the opportunity more than I needed the help. It was going to be good, but there was probably enough work for 1.5 men. But what I learned after that when I had that labour available, opportunities opened up that I didn't and couldn't see because, well, you don't, do you? You know.
No, if you're too busy, just doing your day-to-day thing, you don't jump at any opportunities because you just don't have the time. But it freed up your time.
I felt it was a big risk for me. I felt very much under pressure. I didn't know how it was going to work, but I did. There was an underlying, there was a heart issue that I just, no, this kid, where else is he going to get a chance to do this game? And I could see that he was good at it. And so I just said, oh, well, it'll either work or it won't, but I'm going to give it a crack. I'm going to give him a crack, you know. So, and it was so good because it was the means, like him coming on board is the reason why you 3 boys are still working home. It was a progression, you know. I got more vision as we had more capability. I trusted Pete more. like got to the point where
Yeah.
when we went on holidays, I just said, and it was checkbook time, and I made him a signatory, and I just said, here's the checkbook. I don't want to hear what the troubles are when we're away on holiday. There's money there. You fix the problem. When we come back, we'll discuss whether it was a good or a bad decision. Wasn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that really, and I think it comes down to if you're freed, even if it's a few hours a week or whatever it may be, you're free to pursue other avenues and, even you love experimenting too and trying different things. And when you're caught in the reeds, just hard at it every day, you don't get that to be able to learn other things and chase those.
You
those
mean when you're up
opportunities.
to ears in crocodiles, you don't talk about draining the swamp?
Yeah. So, well, with that, now I've heard a few stories over the years, and Pete has a memory. Is it the elephant that's got a good memory? The goldfish is bad.
It's not the ears. It's not
Anyway.
the ears anyway.
Maybe it's not so good under pressure, Matt, while we've got microphones in front of us, mate.
Yeah, just ignore them.
You're a natural, mate. You're a natural.
So, Pete, what was it like coming up? And you'd obviously seen and been with Dad a bit, worked all of that with those times you visited. Was it a fairly easy transition to go straight to more or less full time, or that, or was there a bit of did Dad's attitude might have changed a bit as far as difference to when you're visiting to when you're working? Was he a hard master or?
It was hard in a way because at 16, again, I think you quoted Vance Havner there before, Uncle Pete, but as Vance Havner said in one of his messages, he said, not only didn't I know much when I was a young fella, I didn't even really suspect anything. And I think that's pretty true. And so you have an expectation. So we had the uncle-nephew relationship, which is a great thing to have. And so that had to be secondary to start off. And looking back from, I'm 45 now, so I can look back a bit and see it a bit differently and see that, yes, that's how it has to be. Whereas at that age, you're sort of a bit confused in your life in general, anyways.
But you were mature enough to be able to see that at that age, and not many are.
Yeah, I think I knew whatever the case that Uncle Pete, you had my back, even if the communication mightn't have been that way, or if things had to be boss-employee relationships. So, so that definitely had to change. And I was living in the house too. So there's a fair bit of...
mixed messaging.
And I think there was something that happened there with... often they had the table tennis table set up all full time, so that was always a good bit of a breaker, just to level the day out. Yeah, it might have been a game every now and then, or for a while it might have been every night, and you kids were a part of that too. And
just to separate that work and family, that relationship, and be able to actually turn it off and on a bit instead of being mingled.
So it took adjustment on both ends and how to make that work, and it was never going to be perfect because we're not perfect people.
No, it showed up in me things that I didn't know were there, and it's so easy to think you're this sort of a person until you've got someone living in the house with you and working with them. And I realised could be fairly territorial, and that's not nice. And it's still there, but I try and be aware of it. Hey?
You fight it.
I fight it. I do fight it. But
so on what some of the more light-hearted stories, you've forgotten them all, haven't you, Dad?
Most of them.
So you probably need Pete's probably the catalyst. He's the trigger point for you to remember a few things, is he?
That
Is that
could
what
be
it is?
true. That could be true.
So what's a bit of a story, Pete, to put you on the spot that those listening might get an insight of to what Dad was like back then. There's a I know there's one involving engine oil. Is that
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, so I guess if you're seeing Uncle Pete in action on the channel over the last few years, then you might pick up there's a bit of a practical joke gene in him. And I think as a kid, maybe before I even got here, I remember getting an electric shock off a fence where I was standing in the back of the ute, and he said, "Could you straighten that post?" And just as I went to, he opened the door onto the fence. So I got a bit of electricity and learned about earthing and
Really?
things like that.
Did I do that?
Yeah. So it was a bit hard to comprehend at the time, but you look back on it and think, okay, well, righto. So we go forward to early on in the piece and back, but when I first started, there was, and when you talk about opportunities opening up, there was contracting that started to happen on a farm not far from Moree, and another 1,200 acres. So, and we were cultivating a lot of country, and so it was pretty much full time in the old Versatile.
That's a 555.
555, yep. And so the services on that were quite prevalent, and it would have been one of the first one or two times, probably not far from where we're sitting here. It was a pretty hot day, and back in those days, the short shorts were the go. and yours truly over here, he was the man for the short short.
They were almost budgie smugglers, weren't they?
Well, yeah. Yeah, they were a bit loose, really, weren't they?
Probably not a lot of smuggling.
No, that's right. No, they didn't leave a lot to the imagination, but because they didn't have a lot of stretch in them, if you sat down in them, they'd have to pull down from the back a little bit, so there's a bit of exposed skin, almost a funnel, you might say. And being inexperienced, and on that Versatile, underneath there's two filters, the main one and the bypass one, so we're the team effort going, and I'm up in between the diff and the gearbox. I was a bit smaller back then, and it's a hot day, hot engine oil, so I'm trying to undo this filter without getting burnt and also spinning it. And so you know what it's like once you start and you think, yeah, I can grab it. It's finally the thread lets go. And I try to grab it with my two fingers, and it just slid straight through. But as it hit the ground, it hit on the perfect angle, and it just dropped, and oil went out and straight down the back of his shorts. And he got out pretty quick, and but he thought I was there tipping it in intentionally, not understanding that it was just an accident.
Because it would have been very warm, I'm guessing.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it was hard for me to read what his intention when he was laughing his head off. It was that LF670 filter. It wasn't the LF777.
No, that's right. It was. Yeah, you were on that one on the front, I think. Yeah.
So yeah, you're a bit stained from that when burnt.
He walked pretty fast for a little while.
So you come to the you believed him it was an accident, or it took you a little while to.
I'm starting to believe it now.
It's only taken 30 years.
So, well, yes, I've sort of vaguely, I have heard that one, and but yeah, it doesn't get any less funny actually. But what did you? When did your practical jokes sort of cease, Dad?
When you came along.
Did I sort you out?
Yeah, you sorted me out. Like you're the millennial, and like all the jokes stopped when you turned up.
Well, to be fair, all your kids are millennial, technically. But I was a different kind of millennial, was I?
Yeah. I never got you figured out. The others I had sorted, but you
That was special. I remember I was known as a chatterbox when I was a young'un, and I do remember a couple of times with you, Pete, I'd be in the ute or going somewhere down the paddock, and I'd be telling stories, just making up random stories, and you'd be asking me what stories I'd thought of today, and I'd just rattle on about, make up this random story. But maybe that's why I'm good at pretending I don't know a lot more than I do. That's probably where it starts.
It's probably out of sync, but the harvest of, how old 1990, how old would you have been then?
I wasn't born.
When were you born?
91.
So it would have been 97. Ken came to give us a hand with the harvest.
Yes.
I think he was only
96.
18 months old, something like that.
Yep.
And we went down, he took over for harvest. A couple of F111s went over.
Yeah.
This field just to the east of the hill here. And Mum put him down to have a sleep. And he was just terrified of aircraft, just terrified. Would just go crazy, like screaming and whatever, just frighten the life out of him. And I knew that, so I come back and Mum said, oh, look, he's a bit upset. And I said, oh, mate, what's going on? He said, oh, me. He said, I said, you're pretty terrified, you're scared. He said, yeah, God and me are both scared.
Yeah.
I actually, I do remember being terrified, and then now I just, love it.
Yeah, well, they were ferocious in their noise, and they weren't, 200 feet, so it was...
Of course, we're looking down on them.
Yeah.
Like you could see the pilot, couldn't you? Because we're elevated, and they'd do a loop around the hill.
Yeah, it was a good bit of entertainment, wasn't it? And,
Oh, fantastic!
Yeah.
We get the C-17s occasionally now, but that was very different with the F111s. I mentioned it in a previous video a few weeks ago, but you could. I did say in that you could see them coming because they were so loud, but because you're up higher, you could hear this noise and like there's a jet somewhere, and then you could look for it in time, and then it would buzz past you. But if you were down on the motorbike or something down in the paddock, and all of a sudden she just over the top of you think the motorbike's blowing up, or you don't know what.
I fell off my motorbike once because I thought it was blowing up.
They must have had a hoot, those F111 pilots, I reckon.
Yeah, I talked to one time after they retired them, and they took them through town, and they'd stop and talk to the public and let the kids have a look over them and under them, and he said certainly they used to use tractors and people for
targets.
Yeah, or entertainment. But they used to leave a big. You could see the trail of black smoke. It was before the environmental conscientious days. And
they weren't tier 3 or 4, were they? The emissions weren't quite there. Yes. No, it's well actually we the guys won't see in the camera here, but we had a C-17 just over here. Brad and I were working on the D11 right where we are, and I just sort of went out to relieve myself and look up, and there's this thing. It just took me a while to process it, but it would have only been probably 400 feet, and because we're up higher, it banked around the hill, and it was close. Like it just
big plane too.
No, they are. They're good, but they do a lot of practice at the local town Moree, so they do a few touch and goes there. I
learned a few tricks off them when I was in my aero shoot. I'd see someone at harvest time, and I'd just come out of the sun and come down and right over the. I really enjoyed that. I know why they did it. Like it was. I don't know. It's sick, isn't it? It's really sick, that sort of...
It's a little bit different, an F111 versus a little Rotax aero shoot, isn't it?
Yeah, but when you're 25 feet off their heads too, that's close, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it probably speaks to that streak in your Uncle Pete about practical jokes and liking to have people just on the edge, not quite sure where it might go.
I think anyone that knows Dad would appreciate what he is. He doesn't like people being comfortable in his presence. Is that fair?
Yeah. That's just nailed it. We could end the podcast here.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the summary. We don't need to do another one.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I just enjoy them being able to laugh at themselves, and I help them.
You're an encourager. Yeah. Yeah.
So yes, that was a little tangent, but that's good. So we got to some of the stories. So you came in what year was it?
95.
95, and then you would have been what, 5 years? How long
10.
were you sort of but because you sort of went and moved on your own for a bit, and there was a bit of a changeover period. What was the timeline there?
So when I moved out of the house, was that? Or,
I guess because we bought the little donga,
Yep.
and you lived in that for a while after that.
yeah, so 97, that would have been, I think. I was in a caravan in the carport and being looked after inside. And then, 97, we put a lean-to on the back of the shed up here on the hill, and then put a portable ATCO building there, which I moved into from then until 2004 when I left. Yep.
Yep.
So it was batching from then on, and getting looked after during the busy times. And my grandmother used to sneak the odd meal up to me as well. Yeah.
And then you were in town for a little while, still working here, weren't you?
Yeah, that's right. When I got married, I moved into town. So that would have been April 03.
Because you married my school teacher.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
So that was weird.
Made for some interesting dynamics,
Yes.
mate, didn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there wasn't too much pillow talk about Matt. No.
I hope not. Although I did used to get moved away from the teacher's desk because I used to talk too much. So that happened a couple of times. I got sent to the opposite end of the room because I distracted the teachers too much.
And then I think you would have you been 28 or nearly 30, and we talked and you said you was concerned about not achieving anything, and you felt like there was a lot of, you were getting older and there was not much opportunity there, and then you decided you wanted to get a truck.
Yeah, I think just trying to think back to that time, it was, I guess when you get married, you start to look at the future a little bit more and what you might be able to do and achieve, and the idea of farming was a bit out of reach, maybe, in my mind at least. And so at the time, the fellow who was carting your grain, Dave, he helped me get my truck licence through to road train. And so in the quiet times I was helping him or working for him. We had a couple of dry years where I did a bit for both Uncle Pete and Dave. And so he was selling a truck and was able to offer that to us and so we ended up and bought that, and then worked out that might have been early 04, and then by September 04, just before harvest, we were ready to go out on our own in that. So it was a good choice. And Brad was doing an apprenticeship with my dad at the time. If you look at the video where he went, was Dad's shop. And so, things were starting to change a little bit, and I'm sure had I have stayed, that it would have worked, and the dynamics would have sorted themselves out like it had in the past. So,
but Brad was sort of on the way back to help out. That was the general gist. So that it wasn't like there was going to be a void as such. So that left you feeling,
that's right.
You could move on to the next chapter.
Yeah. So it was a lot of things I learnt here, which helped me a lot and still do in running my own business.
I remember there was a bit of a tinge of, not resentment, but disappointment that he was leaving, because I felt now I could see opportunities and I didn't know how that was going to work. But that took me a week or two to work through that, and in the end I decided, no, I'm going to support him. Whatever he wants to do, I'm going to support him, however I can.
Even if it meant coming into the bank.
Is there a story there?
Yeah, it was back in those days. Mobile phones weren't yet a right to just have one on you and take a call whenever you needed to. I had one, and I can remember saying, we were toing and froing just with the bank, as you'd have to when you're starting out and borrowing money, and I said, is it all right if I'll be expecting a call and so I had it with me, and we're working on a machine, and yeah, they'd changed their mind on a few things, and anyway, he sensed that there was something not going well, or it was a bit tense, and is there anything I can do to help with that? And I explained what had happened, and he said, right, well, we'll head in and make an appointment and we'll go and see him. So we went in and saw the fellow, and when you're starting off in small business, it's not easy, because you haven't got any runs on the board, and as soon as you mention the word road, train or truck, the bank gets a bit tense about it. And so, yeah, anyway, one thing or another, Uncle Pete says to him, look, you're going to give him the money whether you like it or not. And I thought, oh, yeah, right, are we going to go the knuckle here, or how's this going to end? And he says, how do you see that, Mr. Jackson? He said, well, he's got my chequebook and he can sign it, and that's your money because it's the same bank. So whatever happens, you'll be paying for it. And anyway, he just had nothing. He couldn't argue with that, and so that's what happened. And when you look back, you do need a bit of help to get going, and so to have even that was financial, but to know someone's got your back in those areas in your life in general is something that's pretty important, and so yeah, that was a unique start to our own business for sure.
You do have an ability to sniff out injustice, don't you, Dad?
I think so, yeah. I don't like bullies. I don't like bullies, and I don't know, you ever seen that movie, The Blind Side? That moved me, that movie, when I saw that young fella. You know, he wasn't much good at school, but he rated 99% in protective instinct. I felt after seeing that I could see a bit of that in myself.
Yep.
I could be a hard man on my day, but like you and my nephew, but I was the only one that was allowed to sort you out. Anyone else did, well, that wasn't right.
Yeah, but that comes with context too, and that you know, if things that were a bit hard needed to be talked about or dealt with, even if the communication was abrupt or not quite right, I still knew that you had my back right from the start, so you could overlook things somehow, not even if you didn't understand it, just be able to accept and say, right, well, I'll just keep giving it my best. This thing, and I see it now in my kids when, we've just got a little block of dirt and a 555, and you see them not driving a straight line, and so when you, because we don't have GPS, and neither, I don't think I was here for the GPS days. Maybe it just came just as I left, but so we had to learn to drive as straight a line as you could, because it meant that then when you had to spray, if you had straight lines, it made it a lot easier. So, and it was particularly on the road where everyone saw it, there was a certain amount of pride that you didn't want the neighbours thinking you were slacking off. And, so I remember when I started, and because I hadn't grown up on a tractor a lot, and there was things that I just had to learn quickly, and so it could be frustrating for Uncle Pete to see, why can't he just do that? And I see it in my boys. I was the other day standing on the back of the machine just watching, and you can see why it's not happening. But some of that, particularly in that instance, learning to drive a straight line, is just repetition. And if you haven't grown up on the farm, you don't get exposed to that. And so, you see, and so I can remember he being frustrated with me, but sort of understanding in a way too. So you go away thinking, if I could only.
Well, a bit of to do a good job of anything, you do need to be pushed, and there needs to be a bit of it needs to be uncomfortable, which makes you then put that extra effort in, doesn't it? That's what's missing a lot. You see now, or even even for me, I grew up in the GPS days. I did I do remember as a kid with the marker arms on the old Groundhound 8 metre planter. That was I remember planting occasionally without GPS, just using marker arms. But but then once GPS came in, there was no need, there was no push, you didn't really have to try hard, or you didn't get that sense of, this is going to make the whole year a lot harder if I don't do this right. There was no pressure to do a good job with a straight line. But
as I recall, when Pete came on board, I had a clear objective in my mind, because I'd done a trade, and not many, or not any in my family had done trades. I knew how tough it was to learn and to be disciplined, which is required in a trade. You turned up before 8 o'clock in the morning, you had to be ready to start work, and that sort of thing. And I had clear objectives, what I wanted. I wanted, at the end of 10 years, which is funny because that's how long you were with us, I wanted you to be able to hold your head high and go work for anyone and not be ashamed. And I feel like I had a part to play in that, you being able to achieve that, because that's how it is. And but I did say to you, you're not very fast when you work, because you're not like Brad's just quick. He can do things quick. That's not who you are. But I said you're reliable, you're honest, and you're thorough. And I said that outweighs the other.
Just like the comma.
Yeah. Yeah. And but I felt it wasn't doing. It was a disservice if I tried to just say, you're a winner because you participated. You've got to be able to identify your strengths and your weaknesses, but not in a mean, nasty way, and which I tried to do. To be honest with you. Yeah. Oh, and I think when your basis is Christianity, that's what we've got, that formwork there, and that comes into every part of your life to be the best with what God's given you, not to try to be like everyone else, but to say, okay, yep, there's things, and not to say, well, I'm not like that, so I'm just going to give up, but be able to say, I need to have a go and do my best at it, whatever happens. Sometimes I feel like I'm the biggest hypocrite in any room, because I'm trying to follow someone who was perfect. And there's others who are quite, they pursue quite vigorously self-interest, money, a whole lot of stuff. But there's no hypocrisy in that, because they pursue it, and they pursue it very well. But when you're trying to live and follow someone who was perfect and showed kindness, we're always going to fall short, aren't we? It's an impossible objective, but yet one that gives some fulfilment and pleasure in the pursuing it. But that's because in the pursuing of it, we change, even if it's small, and we might not even notice it ourselves. Yeah. But no, I'm very, I'm very aware of my failings, but I know that I'm covered.
Yeah,
Someone's got my back.
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
No, I'm the same.
No, it definitely changes perspective on what the different problems that arise throughout the day. It's you know, everyone's immediate reaction, no matter who you are.
Well,
Something goes wrong. It's, you know, you feel cranky. You still have all the feelings and emotions, but a little bit of perspective, I think, you know, definitely helps just keep some of the emotions and feelings in check, doesn't it?
Yeah, and so many people are playing the short game and not the long game. You know, we're here for 80 years. You work and you enjoy your work, and then last 20 years you think about what you do when you retire, and you've got accumulated all this wealth and stuff, and you think, well, you know, how can I enjoy this? And you know, but most of our lives, or most of our existence, is not going to be here on this earth. So how do we turn 2 cents into $1? And that's my conviction. You know, like,
Yeah, how do we turn earthly treasure into eternal treasure?
so, yeah.
Yeah.
But like the thought that I'm a do-gooder or like that's not who I am, because I'm aware that I fall short.
Yeah.
In every way, every day.
Yeah, we see it too.
But I think...
Well, hey, listen, you got disappointment, right? What do you think it's like for me?
In what way?
The disappointment I have in me. You're disappointed in me. What do you think it's like for me?
I'm too disappointed in myself to be disappointed in anyone else. Yeah.
But I think, Uncle Pete, like looking back, so when I came, your dad and Mum were here, and then when they went back to Victoria, it was just us again, us for a bit, and so throughout all that 10-year period, like to learn in a Christian environment where we could talk openly about the Lord, and you being upfront about struggles, all of that happening in that period was a good basis for me, I think, and a good you look back, and it's hard at the time, you don't maybe appreciate your situation like it is, and to have not only the knowledge and the mechanical and the farming stuff to lean on, but the spiritual as well, and you know, like, it wouldn't be many days go by without that, and you'd see it lived. It mightn't be perfect, there's struggles, ups and downs, but the consistency, I guess, in that, and to see, you know, just to come to the shed this morning, and I don't get up here as much as I used to, but to see that going on in the next generation, that's the sort of thing that inheritance that you want to see passed on, and that's bigger than any of this physical stuff.
Get in and have a crack, because we can make a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember that time you were changing blades on the mulcher?
Yeah, I do.
How do you see that from your point? I know how I saw it.
Yeah, I remember thinking I just had to get it done, so I just kept at it. I don't remember.
Is this one of those memories that I've got that you don't?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
What's
Lay
your
it on,
story?
lay it
So
on.
the mulcher.
It was a 4 or 5 metre mulcher.
Yeah.
For doing behind cotton.
Cotton mulching
Mulching up
cotton
the
stalks, because it's 30 years ago since we grew it, and it needed the flails. They were Y-shaped flails, so they come down like that, went like that, and they needed replacing. And they had pivot. They were about that long, and they'd pivot on the drum, like on what? I don't know. There was a pivot point. Each one had a bolt, and it could flop around, and then centrifugal force would keep it out there and do its job. But they needed replacing, so I said to Pete, righto, this is today's job, or we'll get this done in a couple of hours. And anyway, we started, and I showed him what to do, and I come back 2 hours later, and he'd done 5 or 6. I said, Pete, what's going on? He said, oh, well, I don't know. I said, well, show me what you're doing. So he'd get there and he'd go, tap, tap, tap. I said, Pete, you can't do that. You've got to hit the mongrel thing. You've got to hit it. You've got to hit the bolt. So tap, tap, tap. I said, Pete, get angry. Get angry at it. He looked at me and he said, but I can't, Pete. And because I was getting angry watching him. And so I said, all right, mate. I said, listen, we're both going to get real cranky to each other. I'm going away. If you could get this done by the end of the day, I'll be really happy. And I went away. And he got the job done. And we were both very happy.
We had the lights on though in the shed. I remember being there in the dark, and I think.
Is that some semblance of truth in that?
Pretty well. Yeah. No, I think that's pretty right. It's funny when you look. We were talking about this the other day. When you look at your personality or your own personality, you think, am I like I am because of nurture or nature? And I often think of it because I've got a kid the same size as me, so being 6'6" and always twice the height of the kids your own age. Often I noted, and I didn't notice it so much for me, but for him, we had to hold him back a lot and to be gentle and to not use your height or your strength at a young age to hurt people or to. So inevitably you create a gentle giant, I think. And I think that's similar to me. I haven't got that.
Haven't got that killer.
No, but I mean, that was interesting that I think after a certain amount of time you were able to get to the point of saying, well, even if he gets it done, it mightn't be the way I would have done it, but that's... And so when you weren't here, like you alluded to before, when you'd go on holidays and we could get... There was things you knew you had to do, things that if it rained, well, you knew that you'd have to change your plans and spray or
call
whatever.
a plane in.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you got home and those things were done, you rarely questioned how.
Yeah.
It was just, it's done, it's good.
Yep. That was good for me, because now I'd say, look, this is how I do the job. I do it like this, but I don't mind. You find a way that works for you, but this is the outcome I want.
Yeah. So I look back on it all and with thankfulness to that, the change I think to come up here at that age, at 16, I probably was able to, even from the fact to adapt to another family a little bit, just to have to, you get your own funny ways, and then you've got to adapt to others, and it's a good thing.
I find you now. I sort of think of you as a son, and a trusted confidant. So I talk to you about things, and I'll say, like, Pete, I reckon this situation the other day I could have handled it differently, or I might have been this way. What do you think? Because we all need people that will be honest with us, but without an axe to grind. Someone who can be objective.
Yeah, and someone for me to be able to, I know 100% I'm going to get what you think, whether I like it or not. So to be able to go with a question and to have people in your life to be able to go to that aren't going to just tell you what you want to hear is important. And so I think for us to come out of those 10 years and to have that friendship, that's pretty important to me. And because if either of us had decided to not deal with things or hold a grudge or whatever, then it wouldn't be like that. So that's a mutual understanding or respect of wanting the best for each other, which is the basis of any relationship, isn't
and it's
it?
very important too, like, for those that can be easily misunderstood, it's always good to have people that know what you mean, not what you say all the time, because everyone can jump on you say something a little bit wrong, but it's not sort of where your heart was or what you were saying. But there's a lot of people, I don't know, maybe more so these days, that just jump on that, and because it's, I don't know, you get a thrill out of it, you know. But to be able to find people and that you've built up a relationship with, by whichever way or however it's happened, but to be able to get to a point where you can understand what the other person's meaning, not necessarily what they're saying, and build off that.
And I honestly, a lot of times, you know, when you asked me and I told you what I thought, but that didn't mean if you went the other way that I lost respect for you. I loved it when to be honest and tell someone what you think, and then let them say, well, yeah, I can see that, but this is the way I'm going to go, and prove you wrong. That was great. It wasn't about being right. It was about being honest about what you thought and believed, and leave the decision with the person.
And then you both learn, don't you?
Yeah.
No, for sure.
Oh, that's pretty well. What time are we at there now? That 51 minutes.
There was a couple of little things that were triggered as we talked, but we'll leave them.
Well, I think we'll throw out a question to those listening, if anyone's still listening this far in. But where the rough idea, I think, is to, I don't know how often this might be, the podcast format, but we might get, I don't know, might get Pete back on, we might get someone else. We'll probably do a bit with Phil and Brad when there's not so much going on. We can touch on different areas of history, different things, different aspects of farming, it's just I guess it's a format where we can elaborate on things you can't do in a 20-minute video. Like, you can't explain the thought process behind a lot of things in a 20-minute video, which, you know, often leaves a lot of people wondering why would you have two D11s? You know, why would you sell that? Why don't you sell two headers and buy one really good one? Why, you know? So I think moving forward, you know, I think it's an opportunity. We don't have to get into, you know, the whole financials of stuff, but I think it's a good platform to be able to elaborate
And like,
and
why does Pete, being a single owner operator, have 3 trucks? Like, that'd be a good question, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Pete. Next time, eh?
Well,
Backup.
there is a bit of that. And if you look at where I did my time,
It's coming.
yeah, a bit of it's rubbed off on me. Like,
When
the
he
more
loads up,
stuff
folks, he loads up.
the more stuff you can have, the better, man.
Well, that's carried on, I think it's safe to say here.
Yeah, and generally we have run 2 trucks at harvest, and they're usually older machines. Their latest trucks are 14 model. So we've got one that's pre any electronics, pretty much an 89 model. So particularly the last few years, where breakdown, if you have an electrical breakdown and you can't get someone to work on it or get parts, or where you do have a backup that's tried and proven. So yeah, there is an element of that there for sure, but one of them might get sold here in the next month or 2, so
Yeah, there's been some whisperings.
more to come on that.
Yeah, more to come on that. That'll be a future revelation potentially.
Yeah,
So-
but I think, like, just to look back and see the progression in this farm, and for me to come up here, like, my first memory would be 1981,
3 years old.
4, I reckon. Yeah, probably 4 years
You were a
old.
78 model, weren't you?
Yeah, maybe 82 then, but
Middle of the drought.
yeah, we come up in an old HQ Monaro, no air conditioning, and I've got vague recollections of that trip, but have been, and some of that's triggered by some photos that are around, but to see there was a lot of small paddocks. It was a sheep farm, mixed farm, and to see that the changes to go from that to another block. There was share farming in amongst that in my time at Ballatta. There was contracting, and then being able to just to see the progression. Or like when I come back, I'm always like, it does me good to see how good God is. That's the bottom line. But to see just it being carried on, and it was a big step of faith to come up here from Victoria, where it was pretty solid, pretty conservative, and we've all to see the amount of people who've benefited from the move to Moree. Like for me to look back on those things and just see a lot of nephews and nieces and that have been blessed by this farm, and a lot of people.
No, and that's right. I mean, and we'll touch on it, I dare say, in a future episode of Grandpa and that, how that unfolded, a bit more of Dad's history, moving up from the Mallee, how that unfolded and some of that. I think a lot of folk would be interested in that.
So long as dementia doesn't hit me first.
Yeah, well, that's, to be honest, guys, I thought if I don't do podcasts now, it's only a matter of time before there's no memories left.
Probably be an hour of the same story.
I could just keep repeating the same podcast over and over again.
I think it was. I really enjoyed watching the changeover from and it probably had happened technically beforehand with your dad and you, but just to see even the wrestle in him, he was quite mild mannered and he wasn't one to put himself forward, but every now and then he'd get something in his mind that he just had to do, and
that sounds familiar.
Yeah, there's a bit of heritage. But there was one. I better stop soon. But
No, you're right.
I remember for a few days he'd been at your dad about getting rid of a stump, and he wanted to. He just had it in his mind it had to go. And he was pretty gracious with him. No, Dad, look, we'll probably burn that out. It'll be all right. Was it on the old fence line at the back, down the back there? Anyway, it was out in the middle of the back paddock. And
Big balar tree.
Yeah. And so this day came and Uncle Pete's gone to a field day. So we're here on our own, and often when he and I were on our own, it was like he'd refer to me about what we should do, and what do you think about this or that? And I'd say, look, I think we should do that or do this, and he'd be gracious and say, yeah, no, okay, that's fine. But this day, I was down on the dozer, down a little D4 that you had at the time, and cleaning out the silt out of the waterway, and he comes down about lunchtime and says, I'll take over for you, boy, for lunch. He said, and if you've got anything else you need to do that too. And so, I thought that's pretty generous. I head back up and have my lunch and did a few other jobs, and I thought I'll go back down and see how he's going and take back over. And I'm driving off the hill, and there's this mound of dirt in the middle of the paddock, and just appeared, and I thought he's gone and attacked that stump. And as soon as I get down there, and I couldn't see the dozer, and I got down there, and he's in the bottom of the hole. The track had fallen off, and he sheepishly says to me, do you think you and I can get this track back on? and it had a habit of throwing one every now and then, and you could, if you pulled it one way, it'd pull it, but it had come right off. It was, I think we had to take the pin out. In the end, we had to wait till he got back because it was a 3-man job. So he had to admit he'd stepped over the line. Well, but I don't remember you chewing him out or anything like that. It was just
we we joke about that story a bit with the D11s. You know, Dad often wants a little project done, and so that's probably a bit of the catalyst why Dad's got a D4.
Yeah.
Because there's not quite so much damage can be done. He can gnaw away at a stump all day
Well-
in that if he wants, but if you're gnawing away at something with a D11 all day, it's a big thing.
Well, if you could get the 6 brothers and sisters together for a podcast, I reckon that'd be interesting, because you'd probably see a trait.
The world's not big enough, mate.
No, but sometimes once there's an idea, there's no derailing that idea till it gets through to the end, is there?
No.
And
Like when your mum's on the train, it's got to go through to the station, doesn't
yep,
it?
yep.
Yeah, that's
I'm
that's
probably
filtered,
the most like her, aren't I? You reckon? Probably out of us all.
Yeah, yeah.
That's filtered down through all of us to varying degrees.
Yeah, some of us just hide it a bit better than others, man. Maybe age is the barrier, I don't know.
Or just if we don't hide it, we'll drive ourselves mad. No. Anyway, there's actually, just while I've been talking, I'm thinking about all the different things that could be talked about. So I reckon there's a fair bit more information at a later date.
If there's a use for this type of thing, I find it actually good, because it brings back memories that I never realised about meeting up on the ferry at Queenscliff. Now, I remember it now, but
Yeah.
for 30 whatever years, I hadn't ever remembered that.
Yeah.
Or the need to. So
And I think,
just-
so that year before that, 94, was when it was dry, and I came up in the June holidays, and we made the cattle panels for the cattle yards that are there. And so that year we'd been talking about whether it would work to come up, and it was on the cards for a little while to do it. But yeah, that was the time when we said, yeah, perhaps wouldn't work for that year. So yeah, pivotal moments, Matt. Yeah.
Yes. Well, for the third time, we'll try and wrap this up.
Not a very good moderator, are you, Matt?
Well, I'm just not too pushy, you know. I'm the
It's
youngest child. I'm the youngest child. I just get pushed around. You know?
Gracious, mate.
Yeah. I'm the youngest child, and I'm the youngest out of the cousins on both sides. You're the oldest of the cousins.
Yep.
So
You should have learned a lot then.
you'd think. Anyway, that'll be it, guys. Yeah.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me.
No, that's good.
Thanks
I think
for
we'll
having
have to,
been had.
This is I didn't know how it all works and that, so I'm learning how to do all this too. So no, it's good. It's good to be able to just talk, and a lot of the time you don't talk about stuff. You just don't sit around and talk these days, do you? It's
No.
sort of like,
Well, you're too close.
Yeah.
You're too close. And when you're talking to strangers, often they get more out of you.
so that'll be good. There'll be more to come. So thanks, guys, for whoever's still listening this far in. We'll keep. I'm not sure exactly how this format will make it out or how often, any of that stuff, but we're figuring it out as we go. So thank you.
It's good.
Catches.